Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on, item 2, approve the minutes of the April 12th meeting. Are there any corrections on that?
Make a motion to approve the April 12th meeting.
Mark has made a motion. Second?
I'll second.
I got a comment.
Okay,
Not a big deal. Second page, top word says the HAS, Microsoft Word must have auto-corrected it to that. Should be HSA.
oh, correct, yep. Okay. Good eye. Corrections? We stay with the same motions for approval? Okay.
Roll call, Todd.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Mark.
Okay. Moving on, item 3, county attorney general discussion, but
He's not.
I know he said he wasn't gonna be here, so. Okay, item 4, approve sheriff report for March.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So I have March fees for you this morning of $2,024.91.
We have a motion to approve.
I'll move to make that motion.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, Todd made a motion, Steve has seconded. Any further discussion on this?
Roll call, Mark.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Todd.
Secondly, I have a signed copy of the Riceville contract for law enforcement services back from the mayor and the city. I will go ahead and sign that unless there's any objection by the board, and that'll go into effect on July 1 and then December 31st. We will send them a bill for 6 months of service on or around July 1st. So if you guys are all right with that, I'll sign off on it and we'll go ahead and provide that service.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay, and then just an item of note, also kind of along the same lines of Riceville, they have to start from essentially ground zero, no equipment, no vehicle, nothing like that. And so I was thinking about that the other day, in the event that this pickup that we will have available for sale sometime after July 1 when we get a new vehicle. It's all outfitted, radio, all that stuff, siren box, sirens, lights, all that stuff is in it. Those things don't have a lot of value because they're dated. And so if Riceville might want something like that, it would probably meet their needs. Take care of us first. If there's a department within the county that might want it, we can take care of us first. But that might be something that we could offer up to them. Certainly not, zero cost. There'd be certainly a fee to it, but I would certainly help them out. It's all ready to go. We can just hand them the key and they can put their graphics on it. And that part of their problem would be solved. If they don't want it and a department doesn't want it, we'll have a cost of tearing all that stuff out. So, it's something to think about. Certainly don't need a decision today, but just give it some thought. I haven't approached Riceville about that. Maybe they've got a whole different direction they want to go, but if not, it might be a possibility.
It sounds like a win-win for both. Yeah. You're gonna take the equipment out anyway.
Right, and so, they just simply would be ready to go for them.
The radio equipment stuff, do they just pair off the same radio? Does everybody have the same radio?
In Metro County.
Signals? I mean.
Yep, so their
Frequencies,
frequencies, their frequency, Riceville, St. Ansgar is the same as the counties.
I see.
And then it would have all your mutual aid channels, your fire frequencies that everybody operates on, some of your area county frequencies, state frequencies. It's all in there. Everything they would want in a new radio or if they purchase a used radio from somebody else, it would have to be loaded into their radio. So it's all there, and ready to go. Yeah. So Works fine, it's just dated, you know,
Yeah,
some of
just
that
dated.
equipment to get some going.
Yeah.
So something to think about down the road.
How many years old is this vehicle?
Well, that equipment probably would have been transferred into that truck, so it's over 10 years old. And some of the light bars and light sticks that we've had in our trucks in the past don't go into the new ones, so I've offered them to the fire services to put in their trucks. Some of them taking me up on it. There's just no value to a lot of that stuff. Lighting has come such a long ways, and they can do more with smaller lights.
LED and everything,
Yeah, so it just doesn't go back into a new truck. So-
Curious, yep.
So that's all I have.
That is on, the one that you had already put in for order, because for the new one, you said you're gonna put in, for your new vehicle early because it didn't know when you could get one. Is that correct?
No, Todd, so this would be a vehicle, we'll receive a vehicle sometime after July 1 of 22.
Okay.
Okay, that's been on order for about a year. And so the reserves then will take that vehicle, and the truck that they currently have will be cycled out. So that'll be the oldest vehicle.
Okay,
And so what I spoke to you about last week is for 2023. Yeah.
I just didn't want to set yourself short if that one.
No, we'll be, in terms of number of vehicles, we'll be right where we are today.
Thank you.
So if anybody here has a question, I'll answer it for you. Otherwise, I'll sit down in my office.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Item 5 is department head discussion. Is there anybody- Department head that wants to discuss anything?
Comments. I talked with Chris Olson. He approached me twice. He said that the 911 fiber project that we approved for ARPA money to pay for, he said his budget can pay for that if we would want to have him pay for it, and that would free us up some. That's $7,100. That would free up some of the ARPA money for
whatever.
For something else.
but-
He said and I didn't ask him about that. He approached me twice about it, so he must definitely feel that he can afford to do that.
Okay.
So we don't need to vote on that now, but I just wanted to bring it up, so maybe next week we decide if that's something we want to do or not.
Probably be all right.
I think so.
I'm just thinking about it, yeah. There is other things. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's, keep that, yeah.
I got one big.
You got one?
So we are still looking for precinct officials for the upcoming primary. At our last class, we went to, $10 is decent to pay them. I don't know if it's something that, it's not enough money that people don't want to help work. Some can say it's their civil duty, but I don't know what we can do to try and encourage people.
How many are you short?
Well, we ideally would like to have 4 people at a precinct, and that's just so if someone has to vote in their vehicle, you're sending a Republican and a Democrat out there.
Yep.
You probably want 2 people still sitting in your precinct, just so it's not only one person.
If somebody's sick and, or whatever.
Yeah, we do usually have 2 people on call, but we still need to find people that work as well. I don't know if there's any,
So how many are you missing, or how many are you short? You know,
7 to 8
7 to 8.
7 to 8.
at least.
Scattered, or?
Yeah, we're having a hard time in Ward 2 and 4 right now. Those each have 1 person. I don't know. Maybe something in the future too, we can, not necessarily raise the pay. I'm not gonna compare it to Johnson County because that's Iowa City, but they pay 16 some dollars. And then they pay overtime over 8 hours, where we pay straight 10 for the whole day.
What do our neighboring counties pay? Do you know?
Some of them do between 10 to 12, and some do a total of like $250 or $300 for the day.
For the day. Well, maybe we are on the low end, huh? Or is that-
I don't know. there's just some of the older folks that had been doing it for a long
Oh, yeah.
time, want to be done, which is fair, and just no one kind of stepping in. I don't know how to go about that.
Yeah. What you can do if you don't find people, then you're,
And that's when you have to start combining precincts, which is not,
okay.
I'm not a huge fan of that.
So you need something in place for the primary, which is coming, correct? I don't know how we get it out there.
If you know anyone, throw them our way.
What'd you say, Ward
2 and 4.
2 and 4?
And then need one more up in Stacyville, one in Zinniansker. And then 2 on call.
I didn't call that guy that we talked about yesterday yet. Will you still need an individual where that person would be, or
Yeah,
so I should still call him?
and it doesn't necessarily have to be people that live in those areas. You can go to a different precinct. They just aren't able to attest for anyone if they were to come in and needed that. But that doesn't happen a whole lot either. So.
Maybe I'll look around Stacy, see if I can find you something for that.
Sounds good.
I'll try. Osage people? Okay, well, all right. Anybody got anything else for department head? No? Okay. Moving on, discussion and action on main to main. Somebody here to talk about that?
I didn't know if you were gonna go first, but yeah, I'm Gail from the CRC. This will be our 5th year doing Main to Main.
Thank you.
And I would definitely say we're at our biggest growing point. We're on a website, Race Reviews, and we got 5 stars, which is actually a really big deal to be on a small town marathon, and we're really proud of what we did. 2020 was kind of a crappy year for us, but we improved ourselves in 2021, and we're going to look forward to growing. But I'm here today to talk about my yearly requests, keeping the route closed as much as we can, and hoping that we can close Foothill Avenue down for about 7 hours or so. That way we keep runner safety in mind. In particular, it would be the marathon runners that would be running on Foothill Avenue. I know that they really appreciate the safety, and of course, every safety personnel also appreciate trying to keep everyone safe and positive and happy while they're here. Shirley represents Mitchell County very well too. All the people stay in our businesses or shop at our businesses, eat at our restaurants, stay in our hotels. So it's a great community event for Mitchell County.
Did you get a paper like this, Rich?
No, it's probably the same route.
Same route. We'll have the same route for 10 years. That's what our
Okay.
Boston qualifying route will be guaranteed for 10 years. After that, we will adjust it. I don't know. Too far down the road.
Any issues, Rich, or you foresee? Shouldn't be a
No,
problem.
just the same. People don't like to look at signs, but I think it's gotten better. I don't know if you've noticed, but
Yeah.
it seems like it's gotten better. And we shouldn't have the Bolson Bridge done, so we shouldn't have detour traffic on it.
Last year was ideal with the road closed.
Yeah, well, yeah. It was open by the marathon, but yeah, it was having the bridge closed in Bolson, being that a detour route, but we should have, the bridge should be done by then, so we shouldn't have the detour on there, but. So I don't have a problem with it. I mean, it takes a little bit of time, set stuff up, but
Yeah, if you can manage it, I think it's a good thing for the whole county. It's great.
yeah, we get quite a bit of help. I usually go out and set up our detour signs, and they're usually out putting barricades out. They help us set stuff up. So it's usually just me, but, and then her staff helps set up signs in towns and along the side roads, and then I kind of double check things as I go back through.
I think it's a good deal too.
Right.
What's the date for that again?
August 20th.
August 20th. Okay. So looking for a motion and a second to approve this.
Move to approve.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Made a motion, I can second it. Any further discussion on this?
Roll call, Jim,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Todd.
Okay, good deal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Item 7, do we have to go at 9 AM?
Yeah, he's not here. Chris isn't here yet, so we're going to
Okay, we're gonna skip over item 7, and we'll go to item 8. County engineer. update.
We want to do, we can do that approval of contract, that way Scott doesn't have to sit here.
Okay,
Just signing the contract and you get awarded the project to Wix for the Hickory project in Toonerville, so he's got the signed contracts back. We had sent out the tax forms last week, they came through, so I'll let Scott take that.
Yep, I received the contracts, the maintenance and performance bond and the payment bond and the insurance certificate, so everything met the specifications, so the next step in the process is to approve the contracts and sign them. So, and once we get that done, for construction meeting and get it scheduled together with Wix Construction and get the project completed.
did it get extended, that other 100 feet then?
We'll get to that.
You'll get
We'll
that?
talk about that in pre-con.
Okay, so it shouldn't be a problem. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're looking for a motion and a second to approve that contract. I'll make a motion to approve the contract with Wix. Steve has made the motion to approve the contract with Wix. Right? And that
Yep,
is
Wix on a Decorah.
I will second it. Any further discussion on this?
Roll call, Todd,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll leave these for your signature.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, see you later.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Take care.
We can start off with a few small things. I think that Dixon's gonna try to pour the railing in Balsam today, so hopefully we get that bridge done before August. We should. I don't know what their schedule. I know that the subcontractor was chomping at the bit to try to get in there and do some of the dirt work and paving, so I think, I haven't talked to him this week at all yet, but it sounds like they're trying to get things rolling again, so to get the railing poured, the bridge stuff should be pretty much done. And then it's approach work and dirt, so. Also, we had to order our salt last week, which is really weird. It was getting out of winter, but they want our salt quantity, so we ordered some salt. I think we had we did 1,000 tons. We did 1,200 last year, but I think we can get by with 1,000 tons this year. We'll see what the prices come in at. We won't know that for a while yet. Also, I believe it's, we had the April letting, so that box culvert on the north side of Statesville should be let today, so we'll know what those prices come in to be. So we'll see if they're substantially higher than we anticipated or not. But what I'm finding out is what the precast suppliers are telling people is supply is hard to get. So it could be fall before you see a box culvert be manufactured. So it's just the supply chain that's really crazy. Nobody keeps inventory anymore, and the way prices fluctuate, you build a box culvert in your yard for inventory and it costs you $200 a foot, and then later on prices, your competing prices are less than that when you want to bid a project, but you got something in your inventory. It's kind of hard to want to spend more to have something. You might just as well produce it when the prices are where they're at. But yeah, there's a lot of things that have, we used to have stockpiles of stuff, but now we build it as you want, just like the vehicles. So we did put an order in for some steel pipe and some plastic pipe last week. Super expensive stuff, probably about $90,000 worth of pipe. And it doesn't seem like a lot of pipe, but prices have gone super high, doubled, maybe almost more than that. So, but we need it. We need to get some stuff done. We just can't sit and wait for prices to come down. So that kind of throws some stuff in there too. So, and then last week I did meet with the ethanol plant up on the county line there, Lyle, and the loaded lane on that pavement's gotten worse since last year even. They want to redesign their driveway in and out. It's gonna be kind of at an angle to the road, which after looking at what's gonna be there, they can probably make that work, but I don't think that, after looking at what's out there, you know, I kind of mentioned maybe we could do a diamond grind or a dowel bar retrofit and diamond grind, but for that small of a distance, it might be cost prohibitive to even do that. So there's another option we can look at too, which is maybe mud jacking, but it doesn't change the load transfer. Once they get their driveway done though, traffic won't be driving on a good portion of that, but we still have some other space. Maybe mud jacking is something to do to level things out. I'll look at some other options too, plus even replacement of a lane of pavement from 218 to the ethanol plant. That'll be pretty expensive too, but we'll look at some other options to see what we can get by with. So just to kind of keep you abreast on what things pop up. And then we did have some flooding last week. Not much, but a little bit. We did have some, Jenny had called before, I hadn't heard about anything, but we did have some stuff wash out. Not a lot of stuff, nothing near the extent that we had to work on. So we just had more wind damage and tornado damage by the sounds of what we've seen. So anyway, on to the budget and program. I handed you guys out what we're going to submit to the DOT. The maps there giving you an indication of what we have for projects upcoming for the next 5 years. It looks pretty thin, but trying to match budget dollars and projects together. It's the crystal ball we have right now. It's what we perceive we're going to be doing. Not everything in this list in the next 5 years is probably going to be feasible dollar-wise, but it's a plan. So if we do find extra money or something, we have something in the works that we can plan on doing. So first off, we'll look at the program a little bit. You'll see the projects we have in fiscal 23. I don't like the way they lay this out. I wish it was a different layout to print out to you folks, but the first page and a half is going to be fiscal 23 projects. And if you look on the map, that's going to be the green highlighted locations on the map. Balsam Avenue is an STP project, which we had put in about 3 or 4 years ago through NICOG. There'll be some federal aid funding on that, as long as some farm to market fund to balance out or to contribute to that. The 105 bridge we put in there using our bridge money. We also have some work that we want to do on Orchard Road and the bypass around Osage and the truck route. And if we have the local funds, we'll look at those 2 bridges, those little small bridges on Indigo. Right now, we can do some small repairs to buy us some time, but we'll try to keep those on our radar. There are a lot of other bridges out there that are going to need work too, but these being local and not in the best of shape, we'll focus on those. And then you'll see the light blue stuff is stuff that's projected for fiscal 24. Anything beyond next year can be changed. It's just a forecast. I've moved a lot of stuff out from 24 to 27 just because of dollars and cents. So just some things to look at. You'll see in fiscal 24, we're looking at maybe that March Avenue down by Orchard. That's a local road. That's not a farm to market route. It's paved. And so any work that gets done on that has to be local dollars.
I was going to ask, that road just on the west edge of Statesville going north, is that city limits or is that county?
That's city limits. I think when that road was paved, it was split 50-50. So it'll be something to look at.
I know that's in tough shape.
Yeah.
I didn't know whose road it was.
It's both.
That's
So I don't know how much traffic that still takes. Quite a bit.
no, I suppose
with PV not there as much.
Yeah,
More
PV's
private grain site now.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them run through. I don't know how they run through town anymore.
Yeah, I don't think it gets as much.
I mean,
it used to.
there are some things, and you know, we can talk about CFOs, things like that, but the surface problem, I don't put a lot of fair patch on that because there are edges breaking off of it, but we might have to start looking at other maintenance type things.
I just noticed that. I didn't know whose road.
Yeah, it's a split. It's a split.
So generally you have to get with them too.
Yeah. So those are the projects.
What are your plans on Orchard Road and,
I don't know, we gotta do it, okay. I mean, I've gone back and forth between only replacing the critical sections that are bad, because there are certain stretches, at least on the airport road, the truck route, from 218 to, just about to the intersection down there seems to be the worst for degradation and movement. There are cracks in there, so do we replace some of it? Do we replace all of it? Do we do it? The first thought was a crack and seat with an asphalt overlay. I don't like that method because the asphalt's going to need work in 15 to 20 years. Truck traffic, who knows, but that's all we can really kind of stick money into right now for that kind of a repair. So, or do we just do a complete, or do we do a crack and seat on the bad part and leave the rest of it concrete? I mean, and then Orchard Road's the same way. We got that quarter point crack that's faulted. I've been looking at other options to see if there are things people have done in the past where they might grind down the faulted location, but when you grind that faulted location, now you need your pavement thinner there, that it doesn't, and it's a 6-inch pavement. Can't hardly stitch it, and it's been separated far enough now you can't really stitch it again, put it back together. So, or you cut out everything and patch for both sides for, what is it? I think it's almost quarter to a half a mile on both lanes. So now you're talking about a half mile of a lane of pavement to put in. So haven't quite figured out exactly what we're going to do there yet. Just threw some dollars in there, trying to make it fit into the budget, and maybe repair it in dollars.
Okay. Second question is, I know the River Road is more of a scenic byway and a fisherman's road, but that being said, it's got a lot of open aggregate surfacing into it anymore. And I'm afraid that if we let it go too long, we're going to end up having to double-ice the whole thing and start over.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you tie that with the Marsh Avenue
That's
project.
kind of what I was looking at, because they're both, that's not a farm to market route either. So the local road is the River Road and then March Avenue, and that cut across from T38 across 340, yeah. So those are the local roads that are on here that could be grouped together. I know they got different project numbers, but we could tie them together if we so choose. But yeah, they're going to need work. And you're right, River Road.
I mean, you can still drive it, but it's getting to the point
It's
where
tough to ride with even if you want to bike it, it's pretty rough. There's potholes down in the low-lying areas. We tried to skim coat it one year and that didn't last very long, just to try to get some ride back in it. So, I mean, yeah, so whether the funding's there or not, that's the different story. So, but they're on there projected to work. So we'll just year by year, we'll look at where the dollars are at, what we can do. We're using, this year we can switch over. Do you have any more questions on the program? No. So we look over to the budget now. The budget's a little bit different than what I turned in for the county budget, not by much. And I do have an amendment that will go through in fiscal 22. So what you see on the budget side of things, you'll see current fiscal 22. That's what I propose for an amendment to fiscal 22, and then fiscal 23 is the new one. There's differences in the fiscal 22 that we turned in for the county. Not many differences, but the carryover balances are different from the current, and also changing some. I'm going to amend fiscal 22 basically because the carryover balance is different than what it was originally. Or we initially carried in what I projected in fiscal 22 was 1.23 million, but because of construction and everything else, it was carried in at 3.4. So that'll get adjusted into the current. So that'll change some carryover balances into fiscal 23, but we also are going to change some engineering a little bit because we do have these other projects that have popped up, and I'm sure the funding is going to come out of the engineering side of things for 22 yet. And then I'm moving some equipment stuff around. So fiscal 22 was $400,000 in new equipment, going to bump that up to $560,000 to be able to purchase 2 of those used motor graders. And then I'll drop down what I initially turned into you folks for county was $500,000 for fiscal 23 equipment. I'm going to drop that back down. We're going to shovel some money around a little bit to make things work and not go too crazy on extensions. And then the original fiscal 22 budget showed a $72,000 carryover balance, which was really scary looking, but because the carryover from fiscal 21 was higher, we bring in carryover balance of 2.1. And so when you look at fiscal 23 now, I know this is kind of confusing, and I gotta retrain myself every time I look at it, so it's hard to explain it to you guys. But, so for fiscal 23, with an amended fiscal 22, we're gonna bring in 2.1 million carryover. And that's using some of that money for Hickory in fiscal 22 and then some of it fiscal 23, because I don't know when the project's gonna start. I don't know when we're gonna spend the money, so I try to balance out when the money's getting spent in the 2 fiscal years, because they could very well start June 15th, and we might not have any monies paid out in fiscal 22, or we could be starting right away in the spring and then final payment in fiscal 23. So we try to balance that out a little bit. So carryover balances, the local option sales, the local taxes and all the other stuff, that's the same as the county budget. I'm changing a little bit of engineering and administration because of bridge work and potential other projects that might come up. So we're gonna, between the county and what we had turned in for now, the engineering is a little bit higher than what we have for the county, from the county standpoint, budget wise. And I told you we changed the equipment a little bit. So those are the numbers projected for this year. And then at the end of the year, a $660,000 carryover balance, which is extremely low. And I foresee that we'll probably still have some savings in fiscal 22 yet that will carry over. So that's 660. While that's the worst case scenario, I don't think it'll be worse than that. So probably, we usually see some savings in some other places that bring that back up. So, but that's just a forecast of where we're at with the program and budget for, I guess if you want to look at it immediately, fiscal 23. And then, you know, I go through the bridge funding and the farm to market funding to try to stretch everything out, and we'll get by for a couple of years here. Not very far. And then there's a lot of red on this paper. And that's for projects that are currently programmed, not anything that's unforeseen. By fiscal 24, to try to do any projects there, we'll need local funds, or we won't do anything. We'll change how we repair some of these projects. But that's for the farm to market fund. And now that the federal money has to use farm to market to balance out because of the bridge funding, that changed the whole farm to market balances too. So we're looking at the same thing in fiscal 24. By the time we get into fiscal 24, the bridges will be in the red, where we won't be able to use some of that money to do projects. So unless the bridge money, like I said, we still don't have those estimates from the bill yet, the IIJ bill. So that could change a little bit, but not by a lot when you consider the cost of bridges and what we're going to get increased to. You know, 20% funding increase and 20 to 25% building costs and construction increases don't fare very well. But that's what we're at. You guys have any questions on any of that?
Just want to make sure that on that Addison Avenue, that you stay in touch with Howard County,
Yep,
right?
he and I talked just yesterday. Yep.
Okay, and I see it's not till maybe out into
25.
So if
Yep.
something would come up over there.
Yep, he and I are talking. He actually called yesterday. We didn't talk about it. Every year we talk about it, or mid-year. I said, we're still looking at 25. We'll see what happens, but just as long as we're both programming it for the same year and the same type of funding.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I was thinking the RISE funds were used for the airport road going around there. I could be wrong in that. It's been a long time ago. Can you use RISE funds for a project that's already been done?
I don't, RISE is,
Repair something that's already was done with RISE funds?
I don't think so. I think it's got to be funding that's going to bring new business,
New funding. New
new projects.
Use RISE.
Yeah. So for instance, the ethanol road, that was RISE funding up on the state line. And then the Valent Road was RISE funding also. I guess that would have been a long time ago was when they paved that around there. So I don't, was even RISE.
For my time.
Mine too. Probably not.
Not that.
Is it in the 80s?
Yeah, it wasn't, okay. So,
I guess they both were here when I was here.
Just
Yeah, I know.
RISE, and I just didn't.
yeah, and there might be, there's nothing that I can see grant wise, new bill that's gonna do anything yet.
Just looking for money.
Yeah, I know,
Heard that before, Emily.
looking for money, yeah, everybody looking for money. So if you guys don't have any questions, I'd like you guys to approve the program and budget for fiscal 23 in the 5 years and get that submitted.
So we need to
Make a
motion
motion.
and a second to approve the budget.
Trying to figure out how to word it. Move to approve the fiscal year 22.
You can just, the DOT program, fiscal year 23 program and budget.
Move to approve the fiscal year 23 DOT budget.
You want to add the
And
program in there too?
program
And budget.
and budget. Thank you.
I'll second that. Okay. Motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Roll call. Steve.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Mike.
And just for file purposes, I'll have you sign. The chair can sign this
Okay.
copy. That'll be submitted, or recorded in the DOT's website. Chair. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me?
Kirk, what's going on, okay?
So far, that'll be let in May. Scott wasn't here. Yeah, that's in the letting. All the plans are submitted and so that one looks like dirt work balances out, so we won't need very much dirt. And I know Hickory's gonna need a little bit of dirt, so. A phone call from subcontractor, they might have some extra dirt laying around somewhere else. Plus, I know that local quarry's got some material to get rid of, so.
Yeah.
We'll make sure when we do Hickory, we've got that information to the prime contractor.
Would you and Mr. Morgan want to hang around afterwards?
Yeah.
Guy in St. Ansgar had a question, if we can work together or figure something out.
On,
Drainage problem in St. Ansgar.
oh, all right, yeah. You got a busy schedule, you can't hang around, you want?
I'll hang around. I don't know what,
I don't know
your secret project you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sure we're probably all, well, whatever, yeah, I can hang around, Yep, I'll be here.
Okay, thank you. I suppose we should back up to discussion and possible action on rural tax abatement.
Yeah, I've been looking into as far as try to get some rural tax abatements to Mitchell County. The cities of Osage, Statesville, St. Ansgar, and Riceville all offer to their towns. And so invited Chris Diggins, who's with NIACOG, I'm here to discuss it with the board.
The chair, Chris.
Oh,
And then Amy's also here because she's a vital part of this also, so she will have some comments too. And I can print, this is a copy of what Statesville has. This is what Chris writes up. There's only two, so you guys can share or what, and print everything. That's kind of what he would develop, but I'll just let him speak to this and then we can start asking questions.
Hi, I'm Chris Diggins with NIACOG. As Jim said, I've written both the Stacyville and the Riceville and St. Ansgar as well, urban renewal or urban revite plans. Urban revitalization tax abatement. Basically, that's a way for governmental entity to offer an incentive for people to either build new or make improvements to their property. So if you have a home and you're going to put an addition on, you could apply for tax abatement. The board would approve it, and then it would go to the county assessor. They determine the value, and then of the improvement value, a percentage of that is abated. So what we typically do in our plans is residential is the first 75,000. Commercial industrial, we typically do either a 3-year 100% or a 10-year sliding scale. would be 80%, 70, 60, and so on, down to 20% in the last year. That is up to the entity that's applying. You know, it's a business. They're going to build a new factory. Factory is probably not a good example because typically that would be much more involved in tax abatement, but you're going to put a business in and your value is going to be on the smaller scale of commercial, industrial type stuff. But housing is where we really see it. And you take a vacant lot, somebody builds a home, probably valued at $300,000. You take that $75,000 off of the value off the top. And then you go with the rollback and the homestead and everything. And that's the value the tax they pay on that value. So typically you'll save, you know, I did it in Rockwell and it was probably $5,000 to $6,000 in taxes I saved in only 5 years. When you get to the county, I've never actually done one in the county, as I've discussed with Jim. Partly because in the city, it's more combined area, and these were originally developed where you would choose a specific area of the community. Well, most are doing it community-wide now. St. Ansgar, we did that. Riceville, we did that. Stacyville, we did that. And so nobody's getting an unfair advantage over somebody else. So it's community-wide. If I'm going to build a garage, I'm eligible to get that because I'm in the area, whereas if you do a specific area of town, somebody else is building a garage, they're not eligible to do that. That creates hard feelings in some cases. Countywide, it's a way, again, to offer an incentive for people to make improvements to their property. That's what you're doing. Because after your abatement period, they pay 100% of the taxes. So if your value on your home goes up $50,000, $60,000, you're not losing anything because you never had it in the first place. You're just not gaining it as fast. And then after the 5-year period, that's when it all comes online. They pay it 100%. So it's kind of a shock to people when it comes on. They don't want to see it. But as far as the county, you're getting that full value of taxes. Again, the county doing it for housing is a bit unique. And part of the reason it's unique is you have to notify every single property owner within the county, not in the cities. You have no jurisdiction over them. You're only offering this in the rural area. So you have to notify every single property owner. They're invited to a public hearing 30 days after they get their notice, and they can come and question as to why you're doing this or whether you should or shouldn't do it. Why a taxpayer would show up and question this, I don't know, because it would only benefit them. You know, they're the ones that are going to get the benefit if they're doing a project and, you know, making improvements to their home. So I see in this sheet that Jim sent yesterday, Osage does the first year 75, 60, 45, 30, 15, and they have no limit on the value, whereas Riceville, Stacyville, and St. Ansgar, because in the code it says residential development area, anywhere in town that you're doing this, you're not eliminating slum and blight. So to me, it's automatically an economic development, residential housing development area. That's why we do that in that case for housing. You can go and have more generous abatement. You might have heard the example in Adel. They actually did a 10-year, 100% abatement on residential property. They ended up ending that because you have developers that are building 50 and 60 lot subdivisions. Okay, if I own a home that's not in that new subdivision, and I'm trying to sell my $300,000 home compared to somebody that's building a new home, and they get to go 10 years and not pay any taxes, and you figure down there, you're talking $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year, which are you going to buy?
Yeah.
So the current property owners were not happy with that. They did away with that. And I think they do the more traditional. And how they justified that was slum and blight, I don't know. So like I say, it's a good way to offer an incentive for people to improve their properties.
Would this include farm buildings too, then, or how would it?
Well, that's one of the issues. When you read through the city one, ag property is not eligible. But what we have done is we'll put that the homestead, if they're doing a residential garage, say, not a 60 by 100 pole shed, that to me is not a residential improvement. But if they're doing a 2-stall detached garage, that would be eligible. But that's what you would put in your plan to specify what is or isn't eligible. You're not going to incentivize hog buildings, that type of stuff. So you can put that in the code. And then everything as far as value is up to the assessor. They're either the good or bad guy or gal, because they're making the determination on the value. Most of them will do 10% increase in value, whether it's commercial, industrial, or housing, residential. As long as they meet that, then it's not the old stuff that's abated, it's only the new value. So when they meet that 10%, up to $75,000 is abated. So if they're adding $100,000 of value, they're only going to be taxed on $25,000. And then of course the rollback and everything, it gets to be even less. So the process you do, should you choose to move forward, the first thing is to adopt a resolution of finding that says that you have a need to do this to improve conditions in your county. Then you notify the property owners, at least 30-day notice. You do a published notice as well as a mailed notice. Every single property owner. And I believe you had probably 3,000 or 4,000.
3,101.
3,101.
Amy can speak to that. She compiled a list for me to do that. In regards to all the parcels, she can also do that, identify all the parcels. She got a mailing list.
I did provide a mailing list. The mailing list was simply property owners within the rural areas, and then I basically got rid of all the duplicates and just came up with a list of singular property owners to send notification to.
Yeah, and at first I thought, well, I don't know if you want to do that for a county just because of the notification requires. And I thought, well, you're sending tax bills to everybody at the property anyway, so that's nothing new for you folks. So you have that first public hearing, and then you have to wait. We're developing the plan prior to that. We send a notice, your plan will already be developed so they can come in and look at it. You have the public hearing, and then you have to wait at least 30 days because I think it's 10% of the property owners or something can petition to have a second public hearing. And then you only have to do the regular, I think it's a 7-day notice, not before your next board meeting. So anyway, you'd wait 2 weeks. You'd have another public hearing. If people object, it's up to you guys whether you want to move forward with it or not. If you do, then you adopt a resolution adopting the plan, and then it's an ordinance, and of course the 3 readings. You can waive 2 of the 3 if you want. That's what most typically do. And then it goes into effect. Well, right now they would go back to the February or March valuation. So somebody is going to start building now. They would apply once you have this plan in place. You guys could either let them wait and do that before the end of the year or the new valuation, or you can take them now, hold on to them, give them to the assessor all at one time. That's between the cities and the counties how they do that. You basically are determining whether or not it's in the plan area, whether it's an eligible thing. There's 3 or 4 questions specifically. And then it goes to the assessor to determine the eligibility. Yeah, the nature of the application would have the nature of improvement, cost of improvement, and the estimated actual date of completion. The city or county approves them. They forward all applications to the assessor by March 1st. And then they use their new valuations to determine the value increase. State code actually says they'll make a visit to the property. I don't know that I know a single assessor that will go out in every single application and do a walk through the property to determine. So, and then when you get into partial valuations and such, again, that's something the assessor deals with. But you have to do resolution of finding, develop the plan, have a public hearing, adopt the plan, pass the resolution, and then they can go. So it's, because you guys meet weekly, it streamlines things. A city typically is 6 months, 7 months, because they only meet monthly. You guys can do it a lot faster. But you're gonna have at least 2 months waiting on the public hearing, timeline, the publications, and then, of course, developing the plan, which, you know, could be a month too. So 3 to 4 months, you could have this in place, assuming you want to do it. NICOG does it. We put together the plan. We get the maps, because in there, there'll be a future land use map, zoning map, current land use, the boundary area, which is the legal description we use is the boundaries of the county. And we've done that in all of our city ones as well. So you don't have to specify the legal description.
You take out all the incorporated towns then? I mean,
We would just block them out in the map and say except for the incorporated areas.
and then,
Each community.
sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Just, you would take out the incorporated area of each community.
The small towns like Little Cedar and Mona, unincorporated towns, they would
They're-
be part of this.
They're part of this. Yep. You would have Osage, Orchard. Orchard is incorporated, correct?
Is incorporated.
Okay. Riceville, St. Ansgar, Mitchell and McIntyre as well, right?
Yeah, Mitchell,
And-
correct.
We just don't deal with them a lot.
Yeah.
Well, Mitchell, I know. So yeah, we would exclude those areas. And then areas where you have TIF as well, because you don't want to abate tax dollars if they were going into a TIF to pay back a TIF debt. So you would, basically, they'd be offered either or. I don't know that you have any of those right now with the TIF. So you just don't want to abate what you're using to pay back debt.
Right. So, well, windmills are all in that, so are they individual?
They wouldn't be eligible for tax abatement
Correct, yeah.
if they're benefiting from it. The value still goes to TIF and everything, but the revenue generated, you wouldn't be abating that to pay back a debt created through urban renewal.
Is there another county that does this, that you know? Or-
They do commercial industrial. I talked to a colleague, this was down in Carroll, and I said, have you ever done one countywide? He said, not including residential, but commercial industrial, yes. Typically, as I explained to Jim, you would take Saragordo County or Worth County, where you have the interstate traveling through. You've got the interchanges. You would encourage development there. Instead of doing a TIF project, you would do tax abatement. Somebody develops property. And again, it's not the property that gets the abatement. I should say it's the structure that gets the abatement on the property. The land is never abated. So somebody buys a lot in a rural subdivision and they build a Casey's, they could apply for tax abatement. And you would do that more on the heavily traveled corridors per se. With the housing, Jim makes a valid point. Well, if Bob is going to improve, his farmstead, or somebody's going to put up a rural subdivision, then it's not the developer that gets it. It's the person that builds the house and lives in it, because it stays with that house. So
Big question in the back.
Is this type of activity going to encourage more housing developments built in unincorporated areas that would affect surrounding towns as far as competing for jobs and that sort of thing?
maybe, maybe not. The developer putting in the infrastructure is still going to be expensive. This doesn't help the developer at all. It only helps the person that's going to buy that lot and build the house. So whether they want to live in town or out, I don't know.
What if a developer builds a house, or, you know, on his own, gets the abatement, does that transfer, then he sells the house, does it,
It stays with that, stays with the house,
stays with the house,
not the developer.
not the developer? Like, you know.
And then of
developers
course,
could build spec homes, whatever, you know.
yes, they would apply. Well, I think they have to live in it to apply, don't they? Or is it?
No, they don't have to live in it.
So if they build the house, they're taking out a building permit, they would apply for the tax abatement. If it sits vacant for 5 years, they're not gonna pay taxes on that. But then the person buying that property wouldn't get the benefit of the tax abatement either because it runs out. Again, we're only talking 75,000 of value, so it's not, like Osage, again, they do the sliding scale. I know St. Ansgar, I believe they do one, they only go up to the 75,000. I've seen other ones, I told you the Adele one, they did 100% for 10 years. I would never recommend you do that. Why would you give that much away?
No, because we need property tax money, yeah. Coming in.
Yes. And again, this is to get people, it's to incentivize people to make improvements.
This is gonna put a lot of work on Amy's office to say if it's a two-stall garage or a small pool building.
It does open up a little bit of, in making that determination of whether or not it's agricultural use or if it's in conjunction with the dwelling, you know, it could definitely open up a little bit of contention with property owners that may argue that their pool building is being used
My
for,
garage.
but I can say that, yeah, those types of issues would probably most likely end up before the board of review. As far as that goes,
Could we put stipulations like the city does? You can only go so wide, so long, so high, and that should just kind of take average, say 36 by 36, 12 foot high, and whether it's attached to the house or it's a shed.
well, on the flip side of that is that agricultural buildings are not assessed at market value. So it actually may benefit a property owner more to have it listed as an ag building versus getting a temporary partial exemption, because ag buildings are assessed at just a fraction of their cost to build. So, you know, if I were to explain that to a property owner and say, in the long term, you're going to benefit more from this being an ag building versus a residential building for a, you know, 5-year partial exemption. And as I was explaining to Jim Wary, the thing with agricultural buildings is that they actually do not add anything to the overall tax base for the county because, again, they're not valued at market. They are part of the ag productivity formula. Therefore, the inclusion of the ag buildings is part of the value with ag land. So even though you build ag buildings, overall, they do not increase the tax base for the county. So that I definitely would not include agricultural buildings.
What we did in all of our cities, revitalization benefits in the area are not applicable to any property in the area assessed as agricultural, except that the primary residential structure or structure considered to be accessory to the principal residential structure shall be eligible as other residential property would be. So again, I don't know how you tax on the actual homestead as far as the structures, the house.
Those are taxed as residential,
Okay.
including the buildings in conjunction with the dwelling. They are taxed as residential.
So yeah, and that's what Jim and I talked about. It would only be for residential structures, not agricultural structures. A 60 by 100 pole shed is not a residential structure. A 20 by 40, then you're getting, you know, a steel pole shed type structure. But that's determined by the assessor.
Yeah, like Amy said, if you tell them that you're better off to have it as an ag building as compared to this abatement.
Right, and that's very true. I do.
That is true, yeah. You know, they might initially want that tax abatement, but again, they're valued very, very differently. And long-term, it would be more beneficial to have it valued as agricultural building.
When I was telling you about the approving the application, and this says city council, obviously, because it's Statesville. City council shall approve the application subject to review by the county assessor if the project, 1, is in conformance with the plan, is located in the area, and 3, the improvements were made during the time the area was so designated a revitalization area. Well, the timing of that is pretty much up to the assessor and whoever's. We've had some where they did this, the building was already up before we even crafted the plan. This is what they wanted to do. Their ED person wanted to do it. They had offered them incentive. So then the plan was developed. So it's up to the assessor when they accept that. And I think they've clarified the language in the code now that you go back a certain amount of time. They didn't really have that before. So if the plan is being developed and I've started construction already, if the assessor comes out and they add a value because it's that time of year and it's my application hasn't been approved, they're going to give some value to the framing and such that's been done.
So that is my thought as well. When it comes to new construction, something that's already been assessed the prior year, obviously there's not going to be an increase in value because it's already been assessed. So when it comes to new construction, anything that's, for example, built in 2022, that will first be assessed for 2023 would be eligible if the plan were approved. As far as partial assessments, you know, I can certainly tell if even with a partial assessment, whether or not eventually it's going to qualify for that 10% minimum increase from prior value. But what I normally do is if it's a partial assessment that does not meet the 10%, I won't add anything that year because it's under the 10% increase. Then the following year, it may still be a partial value. Maybe it went from 20% to, I'm sorry, maybe it went from 80% incomplete to 50% incomplete, but now we've met that 10% increase. Then you would start the schedule. And then once the completed value is added, then, do I explain this? You may have multiple years running in conjunction with the abatement schedule because the first year the project wasn't complete, the second year you added the completion value. So then you're running 2 partial values for the full 5 years for each value. So again, it could run possibly 6 years overall, but the first year was a partial value. The second year was the rest of the value. So you'd have like 2 years of
the
Two
abatement,
different, yeah, two different schedules.
different schedules, right?
And the assessor deals with all that.
It's,
No, I
it's,
mean-
it's not. I actually have a software program called the exemption module that actually calculates this for me and applies the exemption. I do it on paper as well, just for my own double checking purposes, but as far as applying the exemption, it's done in the computer, truthfully.
Is this something you have to do in the cities anyway now? or
Yes,
it's
yes,
happening?
Absolutely, it's already in place for the cities, yep.
Does county require building permits? Because usually building permits have a sunset on when you're supposed to complete it. For residential property.
That is a zoning question.
I guess you already need a building permit.
They do have to get building permits, but I don't know if that's a sunset.
I think farmers are exempt.
Yeah, farmers are exempt from building permits, but residential people in the country have to get a building permit. Oh, here she comes.
Hi.
Jill, the answer.
What's the question?
I asked if the county had building permits with sunset completion of project. When you give a permit, you usually have an estimated value of the finished product. And then, like St. Andrews, I think it's like 18 months.
So when we give our permits out, we request all the plans, et cetera. I'll go out and check all of those, make sure that they're, placed where they're gonna be placed, all of that. When I issue that certification for the permit, they last 2 years, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And say, Amanda, I'll come visit you after the meeting
Okay,
if you're gonna be here. Hopefully you are.
I'll be here. I have a water test at 11, so
Okay.
I'll be leaving at like 10:30.
Okay.
Okay, Sherry?
I just have a comment. From an economic development standpoint, I strongly encourage you to consider this. This would really set Mitchell County apart from other counties in Iowa. It would put us on the map as far as what we are doing here. This can really increase our homes, our fixing up of our homes out in the counties, our unincorporated towns. This is going to help. And this is going to bring the people here to Mitchell County to put down their roots and fill our jobs. So right now, we have all of our businesses and industries are hurting because they need people to fill the jobs. And we all know that as they need, that we have jobs available, but we don't have the homes. So this would encourage a lot of, hopefully, some major subdivisions in unincorporated towns and outside of the countries, as well as fixing up some of the, buying of the properties of these kind of dilapidated houses out in the country that someone could be able to purchase and remodel. So this would be a very progressive idea of something that could have long-term impact to Mitchell County without a major upfront cost. Mitchell County Economic Development would be happy to help assist your office in anything as well, and being able to speak to the program, answer questions, helping to take pictures and do going out and just basically assisting in any way possible, because this would have a major impact on our economic development.
I think you made a good point as well that rehabilitation of residential buildings does also qualify if it meets that 10% minimum increase. So it's not just simply brand new structures, but it can be used for remodeling as well.
We could see like our little cedar areas and things really clean up and grow. And that's all going to help Mitchell County in the long run of continuing to sustain and grow.
I see where to partner with the I can't remember the title of it, but where we tear down the buildings and pay to have it tore down to build it.
Yep.
So it could pair with that. And I also see interest rates that are just going up, building materials are sky high, and something like this might actually just help somebody pull the pin to actually didn't want to do it at first, and this might help them to make the decision to do their
improvement or the new structure.
The one issue you might have, and this is more to the assessor, and I'm sure you've heard it, meeting that 10% value increase. If I put siding on a house or a roof on a house, that likely is not going to increase the value by 10%. I spent $15,000. Does my value go up? So they're gonna say, well, I spent $15,000, my value only went up 2,000. They're not eligible.
And that is my explanation. It's not their cost. It's not the cost to build that qualifies them for the exemption. It's the increase in the assessed value. So it may or may not qualify. I am required by law to notify property owners that do not qualify. And, you know, again, that could be a board of review issue, but most property owners don't argue for their value to go up.
True.
So,
Yeah, because eventually they're gonna fight for it to go up to get abatement, but then they're gonna pay that higher value down the road.
How do we get ahead of that in regards to, I do just what you said.
You
And
can.
then now I say I want the abatement. How do we let people know that you better talk with us before you spend all this money thinking you're gonna get an abatement? You don't get the abatement. How does that process work?
You know, I can say that the city of Osage, they no longer send letters to property owners as far as letting them know that they could apply for the abatement. They essentially leave that up to me. So when I'm at the property and I basically, if I cannot make personal contact with the property owner, I leave a door hanger letting them know that they need to apply for the property tax abatement with the, you know, levying authority, whether it be the city of St. Ansgar or Osage or whoever. And it's up to the property owner to apply. And again, when it comes to meeting the 10% increase, you know, obviously a new home is going to qualify. Again, when it comes to the remodeling, it may or may not. If the dwelling is really dilapidated and the condition went from poor to very good, you know, you're going to see possibly that minimum increase being met. But what you have to remember is we're talking about comparing it with the prior year dwelling value. We're not talking about overall value. We're comparing apples to apples. So I would look at the prior year egg dwelling value. That's going to be what I'm using as a base for that 10% increase, not the overall property value. So if you have a $50,000 dwelling, it's going to be $5,000 of assessed value to meet that 10% increase. Okay. So, and again, most property owners aren't going to argue to have their property value assessed more. I mean, I could, you know, but it's not that often that they don't meet the minimum. It really isn't. Okay. Just a handful a year that may not meet that minimum. And if I don't feel that it's going to meet the minimum, such as a yard shed or something, I just don't even, I don't tell them about the application for the abatement unless I feel it's going to meet that requirement.
You know, I was talking about the TIF and the overlap. St. Ansgar is a prime example. They're having that new subdivision on the south side. Well, they did the TIF because you guys approved the 5-year extension for Lindsay to end up getting the taxes on that. He's the developer, he's paying for it. The property owners there, when they build those homes, they're not eligible for abatement. Because if they get the abatement, Lindsay doesn't recoup his money for the infrastructure costs that he incurred. So that's a beautiful example where you wouldn't do both.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
Lindsay's counting on those being built and up as soon as possible to recoup this money.
And that language is usually in the development agreement with the TIF that excludes it from receiving any other type of incentive, whether it be tax abatement or any other type of incentive. TIF would exclude that. That language is usually in the development agreement.
Yeah, and we say it in here in the plan too, that you don't get both.
Right.
So again, this is something that we specify, it goes for 10 years. But before that expiration, if you say we want to continue it for another 10 years, you just pass a resolution. You can keep this going forever. Now, if you don't, I know the assessor now, and I believe the previous one, if it has already expired, you will redo it, which that's a good thing too, because the language does change. And I know the multifamily one, and when you came in the office the other day, you had the newest version, I had the oldest. They had changed the tax, they went to multifamily, and then where it said residential 10-year, that's how Adel did their thing. They still have the 10-year, but they took out some of the other conditions. So again, we're not talking about that at all. This would be the 5-year, 75,000 is what I'm recommending. And then the 3-year, 100% commercial industrial, and the 10-year sliding scale, commercial industrial. And I noticed the note that in what Jim has sent, Riceville and Stacyville, commercial industrial has the option of taking a 10-year. Dean always recommends they take the money up front, $1 worth more today than tomorrow. And they will they still own the property in 10 years? I don't disagree with that, but if you do the 10-year, it ends up being more value abated, but it is over a 10-year time frame. And of course, the value decreases with inflation and such. So that's something that they would get to choose, unless you don't even offer the option. You can do 3-year, 100%. I think it's easier for the assessor. I don't know how complicated it is to track this stuff for 10 years as opposed to 3 years. I think it's all pretty much automatic.
Yeah, and I only abate the initial value added, the initial construction. So as the years go by and we revalue the property, I don't include revaluation with that initial schedule. So my schedule stays the same on that initial cost of construction assessed value for the full 10 years. So it does not, other assessors may do it differently, but I do not include the revaluation value in with the abatement.
Okay. How would a rural solar farm, would that be a commercial, industrial, or is that
A rural solar
That's an
farm,
assessor's decision.
if it's sold, if the energy is sold to the grid and not for personal consumption, it's to be centrally assessed by the state as a utility. I don't assess it locally.
You know, if it's
No.
something
So it would be paying the utility replacement tax versus.
what if it's personal? Like, or what if it's gonna be personal?
That is a hard question to answer because number one, they're supposed to get a 5-year exemption on solar panels. But number two, we're also told not to assess the, I'm trying to remember the language. The cost or the market value of the solar panels. In other words, it's an argument as to whether or not they increase the market value of a property, the solar panels. So do they increase the market value? Do they not increase the market value? The language is very, very confusing.
For the most part, you're gonna build new, put on an addition to definitely increase the value. The other stuff is cosmetic, and I know like realtors, it makes it more saleable, but doesn't increase the value. So, and again, I'm not an assessor. I don't know.
How about large hog buildings? Would they fall under the commercial or are they agriculture?
A large home?
No, hog buildings, like
Oh,
large hog. Like
No, they are agricultural.
agriculture, they're not.
Yes, they are.
And that is what we make
Even the
sure we don't
large,
want to
even
incentivize.
the commercial type operations are still classified as agricultural.
What about those buildings that are called shouts?
Well, that's a unique thing. They're unique as far as zoning as well.
Yeah.
Um,
They're residential, ain't they? Or
Well, they are, but people have made it so that they're gonna build a pole shed and then they put a living area upstairs. Well, then there's other ones in Clear Lake, in fact, there's several of them. They have an actual house that's attached to a shed, but it's all in the steel wrapped and everything. They truly are houses. Again, it's up to the assessor on the final thing. I don't know if you can split those out between the okay, the
Yeah,
shed,
I can split that out.
okay.
So essentially what's being used as living quarters would be the part that would qualify for the tax abatement. Yeah.
And I think that's what it should be.
What if you have an unincorporated town build a subdivision and you're getting the benefit, but then they get big enough that they incorporate?
If they were to incorporate, then the county would no longer be the taxing authority. So therefore, I would think that it would then be up to the incorporated city to decide if they would like to continue with the.
But if they're in the middle of a 5-year period, how are we gonna handle that?
Well, that runs 5 years based on the structure.
Yep.
So they build a home, whether they're incorporated or not, that would still run, I believe.
Until the end of
Because it has to-
until the end of the schedule.
But then
No.
it continues there 5 years?
That, I believe their 5 years on that home would still run to its completion, even if they incorporate in the middle. I've never seen a rural subdivision incorporate, and I've been doing this for 24 years. Usually you'll see incorporated cities unincorporated. The one factor you have, and I think Keith was alluding to it, are you encouraging people to then build in the rural areas? And I spoke to Jim about this as well. Okay, I'm just outside of the city limits and I did a 30 lot subdivision and I'm all built out now. And it was encouraged to do this because you have this abatement. Well, then 20 years down the road, hey, I want water from St. Ansgar and I want municipal sewer. I want paved roads. Well, they're still rural, but they want the services. They're gonna come to the county in Mass and say, we want all this stuff.
This happened before.
You know, right. So I'm not saying that's automatically gonna happen. It could, which is another reason that I don't think counties are jumping on board to do these anywhere in the county. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Jim thought I was originally. I'm not. I'm just saying things to consider.
So part of the code does specify that. It says, what's your intent? It says, any proposals for improving or expanding the county services within the area. I guess my answer to that is that no, there is no intent for us to do that. And that answer does not mean yes or no. It just means.
But then why are you offering incentives to improve the area if you're not looking at potential ways to finance other improvements?
To get people to come and live here and to help people build and get a better tax base for the county.
I can answer that too, because if they're coming here and moving here and living, whether or not they're living outside of town, now they're gonna bring a family. So now you've got kids in the school system, and if it's right outside of St. Ansgar, for example, they may have 3 kids they're gonna put in that school system. That is still going to turn around and help St. Ansgar by putting money into the schools. They're going to live right outside of town, so they're gonna be looking for a job, say at Grain Millers, because they're close to where they work. So now they're paying taxes, you know, they're working in St. Ansgar, they've got kids in the school district there. All of those things are going to help each of these individual communities as well.
And I'm not disagreeing with that, but we're developing the plan objectives. This is St. Ansgar, housing development on vacant lots, target low and moderate income as well as market rate housing, increase commercial, industrial, economic activity, use available funding programs in conjunction with tax abatement, use rehabilitation funding programs for existing family homes, multifamily development. That's the plan objectives. Section 3 is propose public service improvements, again, in the community. Sanitary sewer maintenance and improvements, ongoing street improvement program, continue water service improvements, storm sewer service improvements, sidewalk improvements, park and recreation improvements. So City of St. Ansgar has identified central potential service improvement projects, which they hope to implement over time. And then they go into the funding, which is likely funding sources for improvements. Property owners encouraged to investigate funding sources of their own. There's federal assistance programs, there's USDA, there's HUD, USDA, state assistance programs through AIDA. That's what we're asking in here. When they're talking about those service, what you're addressing in that, this is what it answers, why we answer these. So I get what you're doing and why you're doing it, but that's not going to defeat the purpose or the response of people later when they say, well, we want all this stuff. And you're saying, we're not going to do it because it wasn't in our plan. The one is not necessarily tied to the other. So when you're doing the plan, what are you going to do and why are you doing it? You're improving the conditions in the county so that you can have more tax base. I agree with what you're saying. You're improving tax base to do park improvements around the county. You know, whatever else. That's things we need to put in the plan.
Okay.
So both why are your objectives and then any public service things you would be doing.
Right.
Because the whole idea of doing this is to provide an incentive for people to do things in the county.
Okay. Reasons why we're doing that.
Yes.
Yep.
One thing that also speaks to is that after this 10 years, that's going to position the county. Let's say we get 4 new subdivisions in unincorporated towns and we have 30 people, 30 houses per subdivision, let's just say. After those 10 years, the amount of tax revenue that we are going to have as a county, because you have to think long-term. With economic development, you have to think 5, 10 years, 20 years down the road. You're going to position Mitchell County to be able to then give back and help incentivize all of our communities so that all of our communities can continue to grow and thrive. So I just think that the more we can put and keep in our pot of Mitchell County, because your job as county supervisors is to look out for all of your communities, your unincorporated towns, and your rural citizens. So what you're doing with this incentive program would be positioning the Board of Supervisors to be able to give back in the long run and incentivize continuing to grow here in Mitchell County.
And I think the wording is going to be huge. And it's still up to us 5 here, whether we're here or not in 10 years. If they come to us and want us to do the roads and the sewers and the water, if we don't feel it's something that the county taxpayers would want for the majority, we just say, no, that wasn't part of the plan. And like the wording in our plan is going to be huge. And
I agree.
And you don't have to offer anything to anybody ever. I'm just saying that could be one. It's just like when they're applying for abatement, the assessor says you didn't increase the value. They're not going to be happy. They're going to get over it. Same with, well, we're not gonna put in a paved road because Rich isn't gonna maintain it. That's the way it goes.
Well, in a lot of these rural subdivisions, they have their own, fees they put in for their community
Yeah.
to take care of the sewer, the water, the streets, things like that. You know, they've got their own associations that they pay into, so
Yes.
they've already invested into those.
And then as a group,
infrastructures.
they come to the supervisors and say, we want you doing this.
Or the town says we want to annex this part, one or the other.
Yeah, when it comes to annexation, when you have an urban revite plan like this, you have a described area of properties that qualify within that plan. So if something were to be annexed into a city like Osage, they're going to have to amend their plan
That's right.
to include those properties.
No, they're automatically.
They are?
in it.
Oh, they are. Okay. So I guess at that point, then the city again becomes the taxing authority and it would go on the city's urban revite. And they would be the ones that would be offering the tax abatement.
But I don't know if I really see that as a negative, because if we help promote construction to, even if it is on the outskirts of the town, if we help promote that, those houses are here. I mean, they weren't here initially. We helped them get here, so now they're part of this county. I mean, I'm not looking at this as Osage, St. Ansgar, whatever the towns, and I'm not looking at this just as Mitchell County rural. I'm looking at this as the whole county in general and what we can do to make this whole place better. So I'm not trying to single things out. It's a whole package is the way I view it.
But then the town would have to come and put in the infrastructure or whatever improvements to the infrastructure.
No, they don't have to, ever. They don't
Seemed
have
to
to
me
run
that
it.
would be what those people would want.
Well, they can want a lot of things. They don't have to run it to somebody that is in the city limits if it's uneconomic for the city to do so.
When
If
it
you're gonna
comes
serve
to
one person, it's 300
infrastructure
feet.
too, I think that's when you're looking more at the urban renewal when it comes to infrastructure. That's what TIF generally is used for, is infrastructure. Am I wrong in that?
The rebate goes back to help build the infrastructure.
Water and sewer is revenue in the city.
That small development area on Kirkwood, that's city, and they still have septics there. They're not city.
I'm not sure where you're talking about.
So just as you're coming into this first street, coming into Osage from the west, and then go south.
Down by the
There's,
lagoons, right?
yeah,
Wastewater
it's
treatment.
towards the treatment plant.
Okay.
Part of it on
On the west side of the road.
part is and part isn't.
East
East
side.
side of the road.
Yeah.
Are they in
on
city
the west
limits?
side.
But they're not served by water and sewer, they are.
I don't know.
No, they may be water now, but, because I just had a gentleman ask me the first house that was ever built there a couple months ago, wondered what it would cost to have hook up to city sewer. He still, so,
That's not cheap.
no, absolutely, that's.
Oh, you're talking about the
The mayor's-
Riceville first subdivision.
One where North Jordan was.
I think that was all in the developer's plan of that subdivision. What the city would be providing versus what the developer would be providing. I think that was all within the initial filing of the subdivision.
This plan that you write up, is that, you do that just because we're in NICOG, or? No, there'll be a cost to this.
What is
I'm
it?
sorry, I was
No,
reading
you're right.
here. I'm trying to find, I don't know for sure on that when they're annexed in. Let me double check on that. So,
Yeah, and to be honest, it's really just a matter of who to apply with. Would you apply with the city or would you apply with the county as far as something being annexed? To me, obviously, if something is annexed into town, and I've had this happen on the golf course road, where a property all of a sudden is annexed into town and therefore they now qualify for the property tax abatement under the city's urban revite plan. So, it has happened. And the only difference is they didn't qualify for the urban revite until they got annexed in to the city of Osage's property because the county didn't have a plan.
So back to Mark's question, so like you write this up, what fees are it?
It's $1,000 to do the plan. So again, it lasts for 10 years. If you want to figure it $100 a year, and then you can continue this thing forever. So we have to be paid to do it. We don't do the mailing. The assessor does all that. Jim said he would help her.
She doesn't have to do that, but she provides all the addresses, and I use her recommendation. There's a company called Mail Services. That's what you use for mailing all your stuff out. So I had them price this for 3,101 mailings, and we send them a PDF of the letter. They stuff it in the envelope, they put postage on it, and they mail it out. So if it was first class, to do all of that, if it was first class, it's $2,205.27, and if it's standard mail, it's $1,724.61. So you add $1,000 onto either one of those. If you're looking at the first class, we're looking at the $3,200, just a little bit over $3,205 total fees to do this.
Then you have a publication expense, and which would be minimal. So $3,000, $3,500 to do. And again, this goes forever. You would be the first that I know of in the state of Iowa to do a countywide tax abatement.
So all the more reason to do it is the way I view that.
Or there may be a reason why they don't.
If nobody's doing it, why we should be doing it? I guess I think that way. So that's me.
It would really position this county really well for the future.
I don't see any negatives. But also, by the same token, if people are going to do it anyway, now you're giving them a gift, not an incentive. So just something for you to consider. This is the cheapest thing you can do. Honest to God, for a residential improvement, $75,000 of value, it's not going to break the bank in Mitchell County at all. And it may be enough to spur people to make improvements or build an addition. So
I don't know if we need to, I mean, I wanted this on here, and I don't know if we need to actually. So.
I will send up.
Go ahead.
We do a contract. I can come up, you can put it on the agenda for next week. And I can come up and we can start the plan development process. You pass the resolution of finding, sign contracts, pass the resolution of finding, and we'll start doing the plan to get that going. And then we'll kind of coordinate dates and such for the public hearing. That's the hardest problem, coordinating dates for public hearings. It's not so much for you guys because you meet weekly, but meeting monthly with the city, it's a whole different deal. So if you want to move forward, I can do that as soon as you want. Next week, the week after, it's up to you.
So that's what I just want to know before we keep going, if these guys want to do this or not. I don't know if necessarily, I would like either consensus of the board, or we don't necessarily have to know what we're going to do for the percent. I mean, we could do what he recommends, and I'm okay with that. But I don't know where you guys are at with this. If you want to, I don't want to keep doing a lot of work if you don't want to do this. I guess that's where I'm at.
Well, I think, the 10% up to 75 is probably reasonable.
I'd like to continue moving forward. We have quite a few blessings, and if we do this right, I think it'd be a great thing for Mitchell County. Just the way I feel.
How do you feel about it, Amy? Can I ask you?
Absolutely, you can ask. I personally don't see any drawbacks with offering the incentive. Again, it's something that most of the incorporated cities already do. And I already have everything set up in place as far as my process. And again, I think that this is, for residential or commercial and industrial property. And it's definitely going to give encouragement, I think, to people to even look into rehabbing, remodeling, building, and yeah.
Okay.
I want to clarify though, one of the reasons we do the straight 75,000 on residential, if you read the code, it kind of goes back to urban renewal language of slum and blight. That's why all this stuff was developed, to eliminate slum and blight. It's turned into an economic development tool over the years, which has been many years. And you'll see in there 404.3A, I believe, housing development. Residential development area exemption, notwithstanding the schedules provided in 404.3, all qualified real estate assessed as residential property, excluding property classified as residential property under 441.21 subparagraph, whatever, is eligible to receive an exemption from taxation on the first $75,000. The exemption is for a period of 5 years. Again, it's 404.3A because it was added after the fact, because it's what we call an economic development area. You tell me where countywide you're eliminating slum and blight, technically you can't do it. If you're doing it countywide and it's available to everybody, that's why we stick with what's in the state code. You're calling it an economic development area and it's a straight 75,000 instead of having to put justification in as to why you made that finding of slum and blight. That's why we stick with those. They're specified in state code. If you deviate from that, you need to explain it if you're questioned. I don't want to have to explain it.
And Osage did originally have slum and blight. And you'll see that on Osage's schedule, they have a different schedule. Theirs was put into place, their urban revive was put into place in the early 80s, I believe. And initially it was identified as slum and blight. And that's probably why they have that different schedule. Personally, for me, the first 75,000 of value is a much easier thing for me to be able to track versus the sliding scale.
Yeah.
I wondered about all of that, what you both just said. I read this in the code, and I wondered why you came up with 75,000.
That's why.
And I'm good with the 75,000, and I'm good with making it easier for you.
Yeah, that's certainly easier for me.
Okay.
But is 75,000 kept up with the times? The way building is now?
Yes and no. Again, are you giving an incentive or a gift?
Yeah.
To me, I see it as an incentive to where the county is still benefiting, the property owner is benefiting. You say in Rockwell, I benefited. They didn't have it until I was building a new house and I asked them to do it. But like I say, I saved $6,000. How could I be upset about that? Well, I wanted $15,000.
Yeah.
So
Like,
that's just my personal opinion. I think the 75,000 is sufficient. It could be nothing. I'm in Clear Lake now. They got nothing. We said, you're building anyway. Why would we offer you an incentive?
When, like St. Ansgar offers an abatement, we use it for remodeling usually, and the $75,000. Now, all St. Ansgar can abate is their portion of the tax, correct?
No, It's the
Maybe
value.
all
It's
of
the
all that.
value.
It's the value. So if it's $300,000, now it's down to 225. And then you do the rollback and everything else after that. So that value doesn't ever show up on the tax rolls until year 6.
Correct. That's-
How many other counties have you posed this to?
I posed it to Danny. I was asked if it could be
One
done.
is asked about it.
Well, because I was wondering if we have 99 counties, why no one else would.
I can't answer that.
It's a very good question. Why aren't they doing it?
But I mean, if it's that good, you'd think that somebody would.
Somebody's got to start.
I can tell you that with our infill lot incentive program, we were one of the, there aren't very many counties that have done that. And in meetings that I've had with other counties, Worth County specifically said, that's a great idea. Can we steal that? So I envision this starting and then counties saying, hey, can we take that idea? Because I think sometimes people are afraid to be the progressive county, excuse me.
One of the things too, and this is a philosophy, not necessarily mine, but I've heard it. We're an ag state. You're not going out of your way to take ag land out of production. If you're offering an incentive, take ag land out of production, again, rural subdivision, where are they gonna put it? Typically in farm ground, you take that out of production. That's why I think the basis that most counties won't do it, because you're protecting the farm ground. Now, obviously, when you get down in Polk and Dallas counties, they don't care about farm ground, and that's why they're growing the way they're growing and fighting over land and everything. You're not protecting the ag land when you're creating big subdivisions. And of course, they're doing land grabs, and it's all within city limits now. When I lived there, none of that north of 80 was developed. When you go out to Urbandale, there was a golf dome and that was it. Now it's all over. West Des Moines looks like an anthill. You're not recording this, are you?
And realistically, we're not going to have a lot of subdivisions because of this.
I don't think you
And
will.
last night's Osage City Council meeting was an example of it. We have a developer that wants to put in 3 fourplexes in the town of Osage. And the town of Osage has abatement currently. And he presented to the city council that the abatement, and he had the numbers, he had the banker there, realtor there. The numbers don't pencil out for him to be able to do that. Whether that's right or wrong, he had the numbers for it. He wants to use File Code 403, he wants to get tax abatement in regards to it, because it pencils out more for him to do that. So long story short, the developers are not going to be able to make money off of what we're doing with an abatement. This is going to be more for somebody that wants to build a house on existing acreage that's dilapidated, somebody that wants to do improvements. Yeah, if somebody wants to do a subdivision, that's great, but I don't see that we're going to have a lot of cropland coming out of production.
And they're not going to get the benefit,
And yeah,
the developer.
I don't see that happening.
But that, again, that's the philosophy for not offering in county. And it's an old incentive or a old philosophy. So, because you're trying, well, when we're doing environmental reviews, it's that you're not taking ag land out of production. We see that all the time. We have to do a score and it's prime farm ground. You don't want to put it into, you want it in its highest and best use, and farm ground it is, not a housing subdivision. Again, just to give justification as possibly why counties haven't done it or thought about it. Or county supervisors that don't want to offer incentives like this because they think they're giving something away. Again, is it an incentive or is it a gift? That's up to you guys to determine. And I think we've all agreed it's an incentive.
Nestor does have 3 housing developments within half a mile of the city limits and 4 within less than 2 miles of the city limits. So they're going to grow up anyway. I'm not arguing what you're trying to do here, but usually they find land that is not farmable to build on, and I think it should remain that way.
Except when you get to the rural or the urban areas, and they have to take whatever they can get. I don't think you have that.
So does the board want to keep moving forward on this, or what's thoughts? I just want to know if I keep going at this or what?
Can I ask Amy one more question?
Sure.
On that $75,000, how much of that is actual tax?
Yeah, so when you're talking about residential property, roughly 55, 56% of the 75,000 is taxable. So, you're looking at maybe, 40,000, if it were the full 75, but, again, that's, how do I say this? We're not taking anything away from your tax base. This is all value that's been added. Again, that 10% minimum increase in value. And we're talking about assessed value, maximum of $75,000 of assessed value, not taxable value,
Right.
assessed
So
value.
which translates to 40,000 taxable value.
Yeah,
Which translates to how many dollars?
Right.
About.
Oh, well, now that's going to be determined by the levy of the township.
Oh.
Roughly, I'd say average township levy is probably about $25 per taxable thousand. Does that sound about right? I mean, just
So 20
as an
times 40 is
average.
about the
Right, so.
savings per year.
Excuse me?
So 40 times 25 would be the actual savings
Right,
per year.
right,
approximately.
for the 5 years, yes. But again, we're not taking anything away from the tax base. We're just essentially delaying it's becoming fully taxable. And, again, there doesn't have to be anything added as far as, like you said, as far as roads or this or that. That's in my belief more what urban renewal is used for, because in that case, you're capturing the increment value and using that for the needed infrastructure. So, and again, you can only do one or the other. You can't have both.
Yeah.
So this is really more directly for residential owners to have a partial exemption on new construction or remodeling.
Does that mean about 10,000 over the 5 years then, on the 40 then?
Well, I come up with $1,000 a year, so it'd be roughly 5,000 if that's.
When we did cities, we always use your taxes in the city is, city's a third, county's a third, school's a third.
Yeah.
So you'd say the value of $300,000 is times 35% or whatever. So you're taking $75,000 off of that, of course, divided by 1,000. So I believe in St. Ansgar, it was going to be $9,000. Of course, we got the value of things. And what we did there is because some of what they were proposing previously was 5-year 100%. And I said, look what you're giving away as a city. I don't want you to do that. And they agreed to go with the 75,000. So when I get into it, because I was going to do that sheet, and I'm like, well, I don't know what the levy rate is in the county. I tried going on the website. I didn't know those numbers.
Yeah, and again, it could be
It varies.
as much as $28 per taxable thousand, I think is one of the higher ones in the rural, but the incentive is worth more in a city because that city levy is higher. When you're doing it in a rural area, you're taking away the city portion of the levy. And so now it's mostly just the county and the school. And of course, the levy is lower. So the incentive won't be worth as much in a rural area because it's a lower tax levy.
Back to that proposed public service improvements, a better one, for example, that I thought of when we did other counties, and they did commercial industrial stuff, is drainage improvements. You guys are gonna do drainage improvements, whether it's specific to a certain subdivision or a property or whatever. So the county is gonna do public service improvements such as drainage projects, because you're always doing drainage projects. So we're checking a box mainly. So to get you away from thinking you have to put in roads and water and sewer, that's not what I'm implying. I'm saying those owners may eventually come and beg for it. So just wanted to hit that again. But yeah, I think it's a good thing. So we'll be the first in the state, I guess.
Well, if they want.
If they agree.
Yes, so.
Kind of, I don't know, the way I figured it, the savings to the property owner, the homeowner, is probably $1,000 a year for their property taxes, if them numbers.
Yeah, and
So,
again,
you know, I mean,
it depends upon the amount that's being added, the amount of value being added.
Because
And
it's up to 75.
Up to
75, and they're probably gonna
75.
add more than that. You know, if it's a house, it's different.
right, but we're not applying exemption to anything beyond
Yeah.
$75,000 of value, so.
I was just trying to, figure how much of an advantage it would be for an incentive for people to.
For the 5 years, right?
Well, I don't know. What does anybody think?
Well, do you want to keep moving on it? Do you like a schedule that's been proposed here?
I think the 75 would be
Well, we can get into all that later. It's whether or not you want me to bring a contract back and get going on it.
You would need to know the schedule that we're looking at.
And we'll get to that when we discuss what's in the plan.
I see. Okay.
That's part of the plan development. So
Okay.
you don't have to decide anything now. I kind of got your feelings, so we'll discuss that.
The minimum plan length is 10 years, or you can set that.
We always do it standard 10. I know others have done it to where it never expires. Again, if your language is changing, which I've seen that, I think 4 times now since I've been here in 99. I would rather you do it 10 years and then pass a resolution to extend it if you want. And, 10 years is a good time, because it's going to take 1.5 years before it even comes online. So, but again, we put that in the plan.
Well, we'll just get something. I will move for action on a rural tax abatement. Let's make that motion.
I'll second.
Simmons made a motion, Todd is seconded. Any further discussion on this?
Roll call, Jim,
Aye.
Steve,
Nay.
Mike,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Todd.
Aye.
Okay. Guess we'll move
That's all
forward.
I got.
What's that?
More than enough. That's all I got. And that's more than enough.
So we put you on the agenda for next week.
If you want to do that, if you want to wait a week or two, that's up to you guys. I can come back next week.
Yeah,
Thanks.
next
I don't have my book.
Okay.
I'll get with your auditor and make sure.
I have one question. Okay, so it says whatever. What about, okay, say something was built last summer. It's not on the tax roll yet. Will that be included in this, or is that?
It would be on the tax roll, but that's still the assessor's decision as to when.
Well, again, this isn't gonna be an automatic, they do have to apply.
Oh, they gotta apply, yeah,
They,
okay.
yeah, they have to apply in
But
order
can
to
they apply?
receive, right? And, I try to be very proactive and let property owners know
Yep.
that this is a program that's available, when I'm working in the cities.
Yep.
And, like I said, not all cities even notify property owners that they have this plan. Osage used to send letters to property owners. I don't believe they do so anymore. I even one year sent postcards to property owners. The year that we had Vanguard Appraisals doing our reappraisal project. So that year I didn't make personal contact with property owners. So instead I sent postcards letting them know that they could apply for this incentive. And I guess as far as the rural areas, I'll leave it up to you to tell me how you want the owners to be notified. If you're just going to leave that up to the assessor's office, if you want to send letters to property owners that they may qualify, you know, this is your plan. I simply apply the exemption. So,
excuse me, so are you thinking with this letter, we do have to send a letter out to everybody initially.
yes,
So could it be in that letter, but are you proposing that this happens every year that we need to notify people or something, or what?
you don't have to notify
Yeah.
people. Again, you can leave it up to the assessor's office to let them know that this program is out there and that they may or may not qualify, depending on that minimum increase. But, you know, and again, we try to be as proactive as we
Yeah.
can.
Okay.
And I think they're gonna be aware of it once we get going and developing it and the adoption process and everything. They're gonna be aware.
Right,
So
right.
I don't know that you would have to do
And of
extra
course-
notification.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really wouldn't want to get in that route.
No,
Send it out
and you could
stuff.
certainly just put something on the county's website.
Yeah,
Even maybe attach the application to the county's website, you know, something like that.
As far as okay, they built last year, okay,
Yeah,
it wasn't in an area. So technically, no. But again, that's up to the assessor. And then in some cases, if something was done and then they apply after the fact, depending on how the assessor looks at it, they may just go 4 years instead of 5. And again, that's up to the assessor, how they handle it. I stay entirely out of that.
Yeah,
So,
I didn't know, I just, just.
yeah.
wondering.
And
oh yeah, because that gets to be a big deal.
Yeah, you going this day forward, or you go since it wasn't on the tax roll yet?
Right.
Just wondered how the boundaries.
I guess the way I look at it is number one, they have to apply, and number two, it has to meet that minimum increase. If it's already assessed, and it was before the plan was in place, then unfortunately, I don't know that.
Because the
there's going to be-
assessment's always a year behind.
Right.
That's why I was wondering.
Well, the taxes are a year behind
Taxes
the
are a year behind,
assessment.
but the assessments.
Yeah, I mean, if it's new construction, it's easy because there was no value except the land. Well, they could figure that out, but gradual increase and, you're doing an improvement. How much of that was the automatic increase or whatever, the annual increase? How much of that was the improvement? And again, that's up to the assessor. But like I say, we had one where the structure was up. It hadn't been revalued yet, but the structure was up. So what does the board say? Are we approving it? You're approving it, conditioned on the assessor approving it. So again, it all falls back to the assessor.
And the structure may very well have been built, but has not yet been assessed. We only assess once a year.
That's what I meant.
We only assess once a year. So as of January 1 of 2022 is our current assessment year.
Okay.
And so anything built this year has not yet been assessed.
Yeah.
Can't you put that in the proposal from this day forward? When he writes it up? When you put a time frame in there of?
No, it's kind of built into the process as it is. It's her determination. Okay, like right now, they built it last summer.
Yep.
It's already been assessed.
Okay, yep.
It's not eligible.
It's not eligible. Yep.
Now, if the assessor wants to say it is, how many are going to come in and say the same thing? And do you want to get into that?
Yeah.
You're always starting somewhere.
Right, that's right.
If it hasn't been assessed, they built it last summer and this was December,
Yeah.
that's a whole different thing. What you want is people to apply before they stick a shovel in the ground. Because then it proves that you've done it as an incentive, not a gift.
I think we worry about that when we put the program into place. You know, once you come, we put the program in place, then we can make those decisions.
Right, but you have to be careful what you're telling people. In this case, it was built last year. It's already been assessed. I don't know that she can go back and do anything or is willing to.
That's pretty much the line. If it's been assessed or hasn't been assessed.
Correct.
To me, yes.
That's kind of the line.
But if it's still under.
But the assessor has flexibility that I've seen in other counties.
I believe there's a 2-year.
And that's where the language has changed now because of things like that. Okay, then the guy 3 years before is going to be obsessed that the guy 2 years before got it and he didn't.
Right.
You're never going to get away from that.
No.
But if it's, yeah.
The way it works in the city, if you want to build something, you come and apply for your permit. That permit triggers it in the city hall. They ask, well, do we get any help here with it? And we say, well, you either get TIF or you get abatement, but you can't get them both. Then that's sent to the assessor and she's the one that takes it over from there. But that's how she gets her information that somebody's going to build something.
Okay.
So that's part of your plan already. You have a P and Z and they have to get permits. So that's how she would be alert when they say, we want to build this residential garage on our farmstead and we understand we're eligible for it.
See, some county assessors, they want the applications as they're approved. So it was last July when they applied. They want it now. Or some want it, give it to me prior to February 1st deadline of the next assessment year. And then they get them all at one time. And then they're figuring stuff out. So that's up to you guys when you do it. but
Yeah, I've always received mine once a year. They just have to have them turned in.
Just hang on to them.
March 1st, preferably sooner so that, so that I can have that in place before assessment rolls are sent out on April 1st. They don't give us a lot of time there, but yeah, it's, I just think that it really does depend upon whether or not something's already been assessed prior to this plan being in place.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you very
See
much.
how it goes. Good thinking, Jim. I'm done.
I'll say thank you. Because I think so. Not that, I think it'd be good. I do.
Like I say, I don't think it's a bad thing.
Thank you. All right, where were we? I guess down to item 9, approve recorder quality quarterly report. I think this is just a so noted item, correct?
No, you have to approve it.
Read it. I gotta read it? Okay. Recorder's quarterly report of fees, quarter ending March 2022. I read each line item or just?
You can just do the total fees at the
total.
bottom. Total collected, county share and state share.
Total collected was $29,213.41. So, I guess I just. So noted and approved it, don't we?
You have to
Oh,
approve
yeah,
the
we have
motion.
to approve. Okay, we need a motion and a second to approve that. Sorry, motion to approve the recorder's quarterly report. Steve just made a motion.
Second.
Jim has seconded. Any more discussion on this?
Roll call, Mike,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Todd,
Aye.
Steve.
Aye. Then we have approve a liquor license for Sunny Bray Golf and Country Club. Need a motion and a second on that.
Make a motion to approve a license for Sunny Bray Golf Course.
Marcus made a motion. Second.
Second.
Todd is second. Any discussion on this?
Roll call, Todd,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Mark.
Okay. Item 11, discussion and possible action regarding purchasing of meeting owls. Guess that's that guy in front of us here, huh?
Yeah. You guys like the owls? We buy one for ourselves. We're just borrowing this one from the economic development. I've watched some of the videos from this. The audio is much better. Everything's better with it.
A lot of meetings I go to, they have them too, so. I think it's, we have
Is the more expensive one?
They are, from what they were either $8.99 or $9.99.
Feedback I got, they said, get the more expensive one.
When I went online, I looked and it said the newer ones are the Pro, the Owl Pro. And I asked Paul, he said this is a Pro, but I don't have that answer for you, Mark. I don't know if there's one other than that or not.
That's just a comment they made that pay what you get, or you get what you pay for.
Mhm.
I don't know what the expensive or cheap one is, I guess.
Okay.
That's what I heard.
I mean, yeah, I would say we would get the better one if we were gonna get something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the top dog.
That's the top dog. Okay.
I'll move to make a motion that we buy an owl for our weekly meetings.
I'll second that the motion. Steve has seconded it. Any further discussion on this?
I have a question.
Yes.
Are you gonna, can you sell their other equipment that's no longer being used, or can Paul sell that? Excellent.
I would think so.
If we're not gonna use it,
We're not gonna use it. I would say yes.
This question.
Yes. Yep.
Roll call, Mark,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Jim.
and the sale of that will offset the cost of this.
Correct.
Mhm.
Do you have somebody interested in that? or-
No, I was
But
just
just-
giving
yep.
Paul the okay. to do it.
Okay, yeah. Well, we're good. So. All right, now we're down to item 12, meetings attended.
I went to an Osage City Council meeting last night and I talked a little bit to you guys about the abatement thing. So, and that happened there earlier. We discussed that. We had a long talk about that. I'm not gonna get into that. Had a NICOG meeting and they talked about the infrastructure bill that's happening. The swap program that we currently use is going to be gone January 1st. And so then it's going to be not, the swap, we were getting 100% funded. Am I correct with that? Now it's going to be 80% federal and we're going to have to kick in 20% of the cost. So
For on-system bridges, it's 80/20. For off-system bridges, it's still 100% for bridge money.
okay,
So when we do something not on a part, on a more of a local route, but on a bridge that qualifies, if I remember right, it's 100% funded, but on an on-system bridge, then we have to provide 20%, which is typically for the market funds at 20%.
thank you. Because there's lots of numbers.
There's
Lots of numbers. And to be brief, I just want you to let you know what some of this infrastructure bill is going to be spent for. And it's not like it's a big pot of money they're going to throw at us because it's going to be for national highway performance, surface transportation block, highway safety, rail crossings, congestion mitigation for air quality, national highway freight, metro planning, state planning research, highway bridge, carbon reduction. So the majority of those have to do with, you're going to get money if you want to put in a rail system for commuters or develop a bus line or try to get rid of carbon reduction. So they're targeting certain things with a lot of this money. Doesn't mean we're not going to get any, but it's going to certain places. I think that's all. I just wanted to emphasize that they're targeting certain locations for this money too.
And I'll add to that, some of the funding that's available grant-wise are projects that are 5 million and above to even qualify for any grant or any money too. There's just large projects that we probably will never qualify for to to get anything done. And I say that more like in bridges or even major highway extensions. It's more urban type, large city funding that they're targeting on some of this grant money. So.
Thank you.
It's too bad, but.
Well, we'll still see, like I've been saying, we're still gonna get 20 to 30% increase in our bridge funding, but like I've repeated several times, when the prices go up, like I said, we're happy to have the increase because it does offset the increase in costs, but it doesn't give us a step ahead on it.
That's all I had.
Okay, I had a Mitchell County Safety Committee meeting. Mark was there. I'll let him discuss that one. I had also Wapsie Finnegan Upper Watershed meeting. They discussed the water quality monitoring in 2021. We did a report on it. They discussed our water quality monitoring for 2022 and also had discussions on the IWA project field day visit. And they also had a speaker from the University of Iowa, Adam Weiss. He had a discussion on flood reduction and water quality improvements for the upper Wapsie watershed. Also had a Floyd Mitchell Chickasaw landfill meeting. It was a short meeting. We had a financial report. We had a discussion and decision on use of website solutions to update our current website, which was approved. We had a director's report, discussed wind has been a big problem. We all enjoyed the wind here this last month. It's been pretty windy. The landfill, the stuff's blowing around. Anyways, we discussed that. Everything is working fine, going good at the landfill. We've got our agreement with the leachate with Mason City, and we'll be able to haul leachate to them if there's an emergency where we can't haul that Osage. And last month's tonnage was 2,655 tons of garbage come in. So that's it.
Okay. I had a water quality meeting with the group. We're out there trying to hire a water quality coordinator for Mitchell County to do samples of the streams and creeks. So that's in the planning stages of that. There's some states that have money available for it, but they're looking for more to make it a full-time. Yeah. And they want to make it a full-time position, which I don't know what it needs to be, but that's what they're shooting for. Anyway, that's all I had.
Just had a safety meeting with Steve, and those bags behind Jim are first aid kits, and deputy's gonna give us a seminar, when is it, May, I think? I use them.
May 12th.
May 12th, and show us how to use them, and disperse them to the county facilities. Highlight.
Okay.
I had a FMC early childhood meeting. We had all the Floyd, Mitchell, and Chickasaw County preschool providers there that gave us an update on how their years were going, the year is going, and all of them really thanked FMC for scholarships that are available for these kids, 3 and 4 year olds, that whether they're financially can't send their kids or there's multiple kids, and I guess it works out really well according to the providers. We had our financial report. We're coming down to year end with this also June 30th, so shuffling money here and there to these programs to make sure that we use all the money. So, and one interesting note, I believe it was Floyd County, has the oldest preschool in Iowa at 72 years. She had mentioned. And that was it.
Thank you. Now we got some management plan updates.
There's one for Halverson Finisher, 4830 Epic Avenue, St. Ansgar.
Just one. Okay. Now we're on to any public comments. Anybody? Okay. I guess we're, hearing none, I guess we're looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Motion? Mark?
I'll make motion for adjourn the meeting.
Oh, Mark made a motion. I'll second that. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
I gotta get some water first.